Commence examination of the communications portfolio. These are supplementary budget estimates proceedings, and the agencies heard during these estimates are only those which have been nominated by various senators. The senators referred to the committee the particulars of proposed expenditure for 2013-14 for the portfolios of communications and the environment and other related documents. The committee has set Friday the 17th of January 2014 as a date by which answers to questions on notice are to be returned. The committee has also decided that written questions on notice should be provided to the Secretariat by the close of business of Monday next week, 25th of November. Understanding Order 26, the committee must take all evidence in public session. This includes answers to questions on notice. Officers and senators are familiar with the rules of the Senate governing estimates hearings. If you need assistance, the Secretariat has copies of the rules. I particularly draw the attention of witnesses to an order of the Senate of 13th of May 2009 specifying the process by which a claim of public interest immunity should be raised and which has been incorporated in Hansard. Officers called upon for the first time to answer a question should state their full name and position for the Hansard record, and witnesses should speak clearly into the microphones. Mobile phones should be switched off or silenced. I welcome Senator the Honourable Mitch Fifield, Assistant Minister for Social Services, representing the Minister for Communications and Portfolio Officers. Minister, would you like to make an opening statement?
I would. Thank you, Chair.
Go ahead, Minister.
Thank you, Chair. As you would know, Chair, the communications portfolio cuts across a variety of dynamic industry sectors and a dynamic set of challenges. Be it convergence, over-regulation or the challenges and opportunities of the digital economy, this is a sector that is integral to our future if we are to continue to prosper as a nation. Sadly, this is also a portfolio which has seen some of the previous government's greatest failures. A sad tale of attempted media censorship, mismanagement of Australia's largest ever infrastructure project, botched tenders and a convergence review resulting in no changes. Today we will no doubt hear about the mismanagement of the NBN. And fortunately, we will also hear about the changes that are being made to put this project back on track by Minister Turnbull. I know many colleagues are eager to raise the desperate need for Australia Post to modernise in the digital age. The ABC and SBS will also obviously cover, which have a statutory obligation as national broadcasters to present fair and balanced news. And they are rightly held to a higher standard than others. The Secretary of the Department, Mr Clark, I'm sure, will take questions on the deregulation agenda that the government is championing. The ACMA will also present and are an organisation that's critical in lifting the burden of regulation from industry. This government will be guided by sound business decision-making and orthodox and sensible parliamentary and governance procedures, as you would expect. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Minister Fifield. Mr Clark, would you like to make an opening statement?
Drew Clark, Secretary, Department of Communications. No statement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We'll move right along to questions. Now I invite Senator Urquhart.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Mr Clark. I just want to ask some questions about the deregulation unit. Can you outline how the department has been restructured following the election?
Generally, Senator, or specifically in regard to the deregulation function?
Specifically in relation to the deregulation function, thanks.
Yes. Since the election, we've designated a deregulation unit. I've nominated one of my deputy secretaries as the policy leader in that area, and a number of officers, particularly from our legal unit, are working on it, one near full-time.
Okay. Is the e-government branch really the same as the Digital Economy Services branch previously?
No, I have made other changes to the structure separate to considering the deregulation unit. I have said to staff that the changes that I've made so far I regard as interim or temporary. I am working on a larger restructure of the department through a quite systematic, deep process. I hope to make announcements on that either later this year or early next year.
Okay. And has there been any reduction in staff involved in digital economy activities as a consequence of the reorganisation?
Yes, I think there would have been. A number of the programs that we'd been through a phase earlier this calendar year of building up a number of programs, announcing, assessing, negotiating grants. We're no longer in that phase, we're in managing contracts, so the staff numbers would have been reduced there and swung across to other higher priority, more demanding tasks.
Right, okay, so they've moved into other areas,
yes.
Is that, as I understand you? Okay, thanks. The government has announced that every department and agency is to have a dedicated unit headed by an SES officer dedicated to red tape reduction. I understand from the department website that this unit is headed by Kylie Brown.
Yes.
Is she an SES officer, and how many staff have been assigned to the unit?
She is an SES officer. I'll ask one of my Deputy Secretaries, Ms O'Loughlin, to tell you more about the structure of that unit, Senator.
Good morning. Nerita O'Loughlin, Deputy Secretary. The deregulation unit, as you mentioned, is headed by Kylie, who is an SES officer. We have about 3 lawyers working in that section at the moment. We're also adding into that section over the coming weeks some financial analysis expertise, given that a key part of the deregulation agenda is also to cost the amount that of the cost of red tape currently in the industry, and also the cost of removing that red tape. The unit reports through the General Counsel of the department through to me as Deputy Secretary. As the Secretary said, I'm sort of forming the policy leadership. We've also established a line area network within the organisation, so we're drawing on the expertise right across the communications portfolio. We've also set up formal processes with our colleagues at the ACMA, the ACCC and TUSMA to work collaboratively on the deregulation agenda.
Thanks for that, Ms O'Loughlin. The Coalition has also said it will set targets to reduce the regulatory burden on the Australian economy by $1 billion each year. What is the regulatory burden imposed on your department?
Senator, we're unable to quantify that at this stage.
Right.
And part of the government's policy is for the department, for all departments, to audit the cost of the full amount of regulation on the industry over the next 12 months. So that's the process that we're commencing now.
Right, okay.
I should point out that, Senator Urquhart, I think your question, you said if the department can quantify the regulatory burden on the department. The government's policy is, I guess, more directed at the regulatory burden on industry, while regulatory burdens that departments themselves have, obviously, we'd like to reduce. The focus is primarily on reducing regulation across the economy.
Yeah, my question was specifically by the department, so thanks, thanks for
thank
that.
you. Senator, I misheard.
So is it in relation to the methodology? Is that why you can't quantify that at this
Well,
stage?
can I clarify with the Minister's intervention? I may have misunderstood your question, Senator. Were you talking about the impact of this program on the department or on the sectors that we regulate?
No, imposed by your department, so.
Imposed by our department.
Yes.
It's the methodology that we're working through over the next 12 months. So we will have a good estimate of the regulatory burden imposed by communications regulation more generally. I'll take your comment on the department to include all of the regulatory bodies in the portfolio. We will be working over the next 12 months to quantify the cost of regulation in this sector on industry.
Okay. And what do you estimate the direct cost will be of calculating that burden?
Senator, at this stage, the Office of Best Practice Regulation, which is in the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, is taking the lead on developing that methodology, and we're working collaboratively with them to talk about how the methodology should be developed. There's quite a lot of information in the government's policy around using a model that's been used by the Victorian government and adapting that model. So we're focusing on that so that the methodology can be settled very quickly so we can all get on with the auditing process.
Okay, but you haven't got an estimate of the direct cost of that?
Not at this stage, no.
Okay, thank you.
But those costs are being dealt with within the department.
Yep. Look, I want to ask some questions about the Blue Book. Did the department FOI officer advise any people who had applied for access to incoming minister's brief that a discount on the fee would be applied because release of the document was in the public interest?
I don't know the precise answer to your question, Senator. I certainly know where the process finished, which is advice to all applicants that fees would be waived and deposits collected would be refunded. But I'll have to take on notice the advice that was provided on the way through regarding discount.
Okay, if you can take that on notice, that would be great. You may need, I don't know whether you know the answer, but I'll ask these ones and we'll see whether you can answer them. Has the department FOI officer subsequently advised applicants that the whole of brief is exempt?
Yes.
Okay. Why did the officer think release was in the public interest but subsequently decide they were exempt? And did the department receive any instruction from Prime Minister and Cabinet on how to respond to the request?
Senator, your question presumes the first point, and I'm unable to confirm that. I suspect, to take your question in stages, there is a general principle that releases in the public interest may attract a discount, and my expectation, I'll take on notice and confirm, is that it was the general point that was being made early in the process. The actual details of the decision of the department not to release our incoming government brief for the incoming coalition government, the reasons for that decision were laid out in great detail in the first decision that was made. That was in relation to a decision made by journalists from The Australian that laid out our overall argument that disclosure would adversely affect both the development of an effective relationship between the Minister and the Department and potentially the quality of future briefings. So we made the high-level point in regard to the nature of the IGB process. We also noted that there have been two recent decisions by the Information Commissioner that have also supported the view that IGBs are generally deliberative documents and that strong arguments can be made for their exemption under the deliberative process exemption, section 47C, and the certain operation of agencies exemption, section 47ED.
Okay, my second part of the question was, did the department receive any instruction from Prime Minister and Cabinet on how to respond to the request?
No, we did not receive any instructions from any agencies on how to deal with this, with that request, or the several requests that we had.
Yep, thank you. In the House yesterday, the Minister claimed that it wasn't his decision to not release the Blue Book, but a decision of the senior public servants. Isn't it the case that the Act does not prevent the Minister releasing a document, even if it is an exempt document for the purposes of the Act?
Well, the first point is, of course, the Minister was correct that the decision regarding the incoming government brief was made within the department. While it was made by the officer who signed and formally signed off on the decision, there was a good deal of consultation on that, including with myself, and I'm quite happy to take responsibility for the decision that was made in regard to the IGB. There are many provisions and many ways of dealing with exposure of documents. The decision that we made was on the merits as argued in the case. The fact that there may be other provisions that may apply in some or different circumstances is just as it is. This decision was made on the basis that I previously outlined.
Chair, observation that may be of assistance to the committee. I know as senators we don't usually have the opportunity or necessarily the desire to watch question time in the House, but yesterday I did have that opportunity, and I did see that Mr Turnbull did make an offer, which was if the current opposition would agree to release cabinet documents in relation to the NBN, he would be happy to petition the department to consider the issue of releasing incoming government briefs. Obviously, decisions on FOI matters are a matter for the decision maker in the department, but I thought it may be of interest to the committee that Minister Turnbull did make that offer in the context of question time yesterday.
Was that it? Through you, Chair? Was that the...
Chair, I just thought that might be helpful information for the committee.
just trying to understand...
Just going back to the question, could you outline who else that you consulted with in making the decision to release the Blue Book?
Well, the decision officer consulted within the department on the content of the IGB in considering the applications that he had in front of them, and that consultation included senior officers of the department in general and me in particular.
Okay. I just want to direct a question to the Assistant Minister. Given Minister Turnbull's commitment to transparency, why won't he release the Blue Book? And is it because Mr Turnbull won't let him?
Through you, Chair, Senator Urquhart, I think I've inadvertently preempted your question in my comments before. Minister Turnbull has made clear that if the current opposition would consent to release information, release cabinet papers on the NBN, he would be happy to put the proposition to the department to reconsider the issue of the release of the Blue Books. If the opposition want to talk about transparency, then I think it would be good if they led by example in this area. But just going to the Secretary's point, as a general matter of principle, I think the view has been taken across departments over a number of years that incoming government briefs are a deliberative body of work and appropriate for ministers to receive that in confidence. But as I say, if the opposition wants to lead by example and agree to the release of cabinet documents on the NBN, then this is something that can be revisited.
Well, I'm not sure that actually answered my question, but I'll leave it at that. I've just got a question about the reviews. The government has promised a number of reviews of the NBN. I just want to confirm the current status of each. The strategic review is being undertaken by NBN Co, and they will be reporting in 60 days, which is the 2nd of December. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Will the department be contracting independent advisors to assess the review?
The department is not contracting advisors to assist that review, Senator.
Right. So who is?
NBN Co.
Right, NBN Co. Yep, okay. About two more? Yep. The Minister has also said that there will be a review of the quality and adequacy of broadband availability. Have you written to carriers to request information for this report?
We have.
Yep. And which carriers were asked to provide information?
Certainly Telstra, Optus and definitely as the two major infrastructure providers, and a number of other carriers where they had relevant infrastructure or information.
Right. And as I understand it was 31st of October that they had to reply by?
I'm not aware of that, but that's quite probably correct,
Okay.
Senator.
Could you confirm that? Is there someone that may be able to help
I'm
with
happy
that?
to ask. Mr Robinson may be able to assist.
Thank you.
Senator, it's Ian Robinson, Deputy Secretary of Telecommunications. We've had put a number of requests for information. One of them did have the 31st of October as a date.
Right, okay. And have you got replies so that the report can be prepared?
We do have replies, yes, and we're going through those at the moment.
Right, so all of them, that you've got a complete lot of replies?
We believe we've got enough information at the moment to prepare the material, yes.
Okay. I've got two more questions, Chair, but you're winding me up.
Yeah,
so...
we're just running out of time.
Okay.
So
Well, I'll...
what if I move to the others and come back to you if we have time?
All right, and if not, I'll put them on notice.
Thank you. Senator Fawcett, do you have a few questions, a couple of minutes before I go to Senator Ludlam, please?
Yeah, thank you. Mr Clark, you
mentioned before in your response to Senator Urquhart about the structure of the deregulation group. Could you just talk to the committee a little bit about how you actually plan to go about assessing the deregulation, and particularly, you mentioned before about the other government departments you interact with, but your plans for interaction and consultation with the industry sectors who are impacted by the regulation?
Thank you, Senator. I'll make an opening remark and then pass to Ms O'Loughlin. We've been doing a lot of planning about how to go about this very large task of considering opportunities to relieve the regulatory burden right across the communications sector. So we're still in the early stages of planning it through, but I'll ask Ms O'Loughlin to expand on that.
Senator, the way we look at taking the project forward is there's already been a lot of information provided to government and the department from the industry about what regulation they find imposes the most costs upon them. And that's a dialogue that we're continuing at the moment, and we expect will continue over the coming months. So there's already a very strong awareness and a strong understanding from industry of the government's agenda, and a lot of them have started preparing advice to the government or indeed provided advice to the government. So we'll be taking that into account as we look at also the costing methodology and how we look at actually assessing what the cost of that regulation actually is. And that's probably a gap in the information that we have from industry at the moment.
So could I just ask, how do you define industry? Do you mainly look at the larger providers or right down to sort of shopfront retailers? Where does that boundary lie for you?
The policy asks us to look across the entire industry sector that the regulation applies to. It also asks us to take into account where regulation may be applied to not-for-profits or indeed to individuals. So it's a very broad scope where we would be looking at most of our regulation is directed towards the telecommunications and broadcasting sectors and internet service providers. They would be our main focus because that's where the regulation really hits.
Mm-hmm. Is convergence impacting on the regulatory models that you need to have in place?
I think in general, of course it is. The rapid change of technology means that some of the older style regulation that we have in place at the moment is becoming less useful. So and also just the different types of business models that are entering the market cause us to look at the legislation and to review whether or not it's still appropriate. So yes, it is, particularly in areas like content, where content is now being provided not just by broadcasters but through telecommunications companies. So there's an increasing pressure point there, and that's something that industry certainly talk to us about on a regular basis.
Sure. You used the word, I think, less than useful or something. I'd call it redundant. Could you just give the committee an idea? Are we talking 2%, 10%, 50% of regulation that you think might be redundant?
No, I think it's difficult to quantify at the moment because a lot of our regulation has an interconnectedness to it. So some parts of it may look like it's redundant, but in fact it does still serve a purpose in the overall scheme of things. Although we do think that there are some early areas where we'd like to look at things which seem to be completely outdated, but also to look at things like reporting requirements which may impose significant costs on industry, but indeed the reason why their reporting is no longer necessary. So they're the types of things that we want to talk to industry about early on.
Sure. I'm just trying to get an understanding of the scope of the task, whether it's going to involve a large amount of consequential regulation or indeed legislation as you move through the process.
And Senator, that's indeed a really important point, and at this early stage we're unable to quantify that. But I think there'll be areas where regulation is redundant, overtaken by events such as convergence and other developments. They are perhaps the first and easier wins, and there may be other areas where a quite different form and approach to the regulation is required. That will be a more complex task, and we're at the early stages of working through those two types.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Fawcett. Senator Ludlam.
Thank you, Chair. We'll get NBN Co in front of us a bit later tonight, but in the meantime I wanted to put to the department some questions about what the
candidate selection process for the board of NBN Co look like from the department's perspective? So can you just give us a brief rundown of what visibility you had about the process of board appointments to NBN Co?
Certainly, Senator. Board appointments, of course, are made by the government, and the department's role, therefore, is to advise the minister and through him, the government. So we had a very high visibility of that process.
All right. So you were consulted and involved in the process?
We were managing the process.
You were managing the process. Can I say it looked, as an outsider to that process, as though most of the decisions had been taken well before the election. Were you advising Mr Turnbull from opposition?
No, Senator, and your perception is not correct.
Why is that? Most of the people who were contemplated for board appointment, their names were in the field and in the public domain well before September 7.
Well, Senator, I have the advantage of having seen exactly the processes that took place between the election and the final announcement, and the assurance that I give you is that the process followed the normal pathway of a long list, a short list, close consideration and final decision by government.
So we should just take it as coincidence then that you could practically assemble the final makeup of the board well before the federal election?
No, I think you could read it
that way.
I think you could read it that the market had a fair understanding of who was around with the capabilities to do it, and market read it not that badly.
So you don't think that people had been tapped on the shoulder well before September 7th?
As far as I'm concerned, Senator, I observed and managed a process that followed the normal process of long list, short list and final selection by government.
So when were you first engaged directly in that issue?
Post the election.
But when?
It was a topic of discussion quite early after the election with the incoming minister, because of course it was on the critical path to implementing the government's NBN reform program.
It was fairly short.
So quite quickly, yes.
Okay. You've taken some questions already on the process of the reviews. Have you got any direct engagement, or are they all being conducted internally through NBN Co?
No, there are 4 reviews, if I can use the term review broadly. The strategic review that Senator Urquhart has asked me about, which is being managed by the company. The process that I was also asked about of considering the quality of broadband currently available across the country, that is being done within the department, drawing on information from industry. There is a cost-benefit analysis and regulatory review process. The government has not yet made decisions on the structure and implementation of that review. And there is a policy audit, if I can call it that. And similarly, the government has not yet made decisions on the structure of that review.
Yeah, all right. Okay, you're advising in those latter 2 cases?
Yes.
You are, okay. Did the department have any role in the appointment of consultants reviewing the NBN Co? And the one that I'd draw to your attention would be Mr Henry Urgus, who's a fairly strident critic. He's now consulting for Deloitte. Now, the sector knew that he was going to be appointed. Did the department?
Mr Urgas is not currently a consultant to the department, Senator.
Not to the consultant, but he is consulting for one of the companies that is engaged quite intimately in reviews of NBN Co. That would be Deloitte.
Well, yes, I'm aware of that, but...
Nothing to do with the department, no input?
Correct.
Okay. Just finally, because we're right out of time, and this might have to go through you, Senator Fifield, what's the status of the convergence review? 2 years' worth of work, more or less, conducted by the former government, very wide scope of consultation, public and industry, civil society groups. What's to become of that work as far as this present government's concerned?
Secretary.
Senator, the work stream that is really addressing the issues that were raised in the convergence review is now under the heading of the deregulation agenda. As Ms O'Loughlin indicated from a question from Senator Fawcett, the convergence phenomena is driving much of the need to reconsider regulation in the sector. So it's been taken up in that new work stream.
That's fascinating. So, to the question of convergence, this government's answer is further deregulation.
It's a question of what is the appropriate regulatory structure for a converging sector.
Are there proposals afoot, for example, under the ambit of deregulation to further relax cross-media ownership laws?
There are no decisions yet taken by the government in regard to the precise details of what a new regulatory structure would look like in this sector, Senator.
All right, but deregulation is quite clearly the overarching principle. Senator Fifield, is relaxation or restructuring of cross-media ownership laws on the table?
Look, I don't have anything to add to what the Secretary said, Senator Ludlam.
Well, the Secretary doesn't have visibility. These are political decisions. It's not really within his ambit to have opinions. It's within yours.
Sure. Well, as the Minister representing the Minister for Communications, I don't have anything further to add.
Could you take that on notice for me, Senator Fifield? The specific question that I'm asking you to take on notice is whether cross-media ownership laws are on the table as part of your deregulation agenda. I'll leave it there. Thanks for letting us run a little over, Chair.
You're all done, Senator Ludlam. Thank you. And thank you, Mr.